what's up? Red Panda Anthem. Red Panda, what's good?
Can I touch on something really quickly? Because the Matt story is incredible. And shout out to MG's obviously helped me with my home. When he was doing that process, you know the deal's about to collapse, right? You've been in the space and you've been in real estate. Your initial thoughts when this is happening, like, because you've seen deals go bad, right? Like when he actually put his own money up and make sure that you know your deal was secure. What is that? What did that feel like for you, right? Because like you've been in situations where the deal's going bad and it's like, who is this guy? I can't mess with him anymore. And it's somebody that looks like us at that. So what was that like?
It's it's your first deal, and again, just so you can just so our viewers can understand what I'm talking about. So when you're buying a house, obviously there's an amount of time that you have, right? You got to close within a certain window, right? So if he promises, hey, we're gonna get this deal down to 15%, right? And I decide, all right, I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna use you as my person to get this deal done, right? Then the banks, whatever happens, they come back and say, oh, it's going to be 20% actually. Matter of fact, it might be 20%, 25%, right? That could be a difference in $100,000, $150,000, right? Is that going to break me? No, right? I could pay it, but it would just annoy me that you promised me something that you can't deliver, right? So then when you step in and say, yo, if the banks won't secure you at the rate that I promised you, I'll put my own $100,000. I'll put the money in escrow just so that I'm gonna do what I said I was gonna do, right?
At all costs.
I would have never taken his money. I might have taken his money. It wasn't about taking his money. It's like you said, and that automatically shifted my mindset from being mad about the deal to being like, yo, however it goes, I want to bet on this horse. I want to bet on what he's got going on because it's the integrity for me.
Shout out to MG.
Shout out to Matt. Shout out to Matt, the mortgage guy. That's envy calls him. So all right, so staying in the real estate game.
Don't get too far. The mortgage guy for now. This guy's the king all of a sudden. I'm taking the story back, all right? And send me the $100,000 now.
So let's talk about this. Airbnb.
Yeah.
So I spoke to you and you was like, you've been making some nice profit off of Airbnb. So about that, how did you get turned on to the Airbnb game? And let's talk about the Airbnb business for you.
Yeah, it's crazy because I've been coming down to like a city like Miami for years, and Airbnb has just changed how people travel, right? People don't even automatically go to a hotel now. You'll go to an Airbnb. But it takes me back to what you were saying after the recession, right? So I buy a house in Guttenberg, New Jersey, back when, everybody, when you was working in New York, you lived in New Jersey at the time, right? So Edgewater, New Jersey area, right? Bought this house 2007, 2006 for about $500-some thousand. I think it was like $525 for this townhouse, right? So I get a new contract. I'm leaving 106 and Park, new contract in LA at E-News, right? So abruptly within a month, I got to move, right? I'm now in LA, right? So now I have this property that's costing me a few $1,000s a month. I get a renter in there, but I'm losing still about $1,500, $2,000 a month in rents, right? Fast forward, I get chicken, and within 12 months of that, I'm like, oh man, this is bleeding me dry, right? Sell the house, get out of it, right? I looked at that house before I did this interview. The house now is the last time it sold was for $1.5 million, right? On a $500,000 house.
Yeah.
If I would have not been scared and stuck with it and kept the property, I would have made my money twofold on it a million times over, right? But as especially as Black people, my parents, we're all first generation, a lot of us.
Yep.
So I've been told my whole life, don't have multiple mortgages. You don't want to have multiple properties, right? The Airbnb game has completely shifted a lot of that paradox, right?
Yeah.
Now I have multiple homes in multiple cities. I just bought a house I was talking about in Palm Springs. So I bought this house for $1 million, right? The house is now, the comps in that neighborhood are doing 2.1 million in that same neighborhood, right? My monthly nut on that house, somewhere $6,000-$7,000 on the monthly nut on it, right? I'm renting it $20,000 a month, right? So this is just, and that's on one property, right?
So you do monthly rents, like long term?
there's different markets. Some markets you can do it, like in LA, I can do a short term with one of those houses. In that particular house in Palm Springs, there's a moratorium, so you have to do a monthly rental. It has to be a 30-day on that. But again, there's from VBRO to Airbnb to the MLS. Now there's so many things in place where you can own homes and not have to feel like, oh, I have to rush out of this house. I can now have a renter in place. I die tomorrow, my mom for the rest of her life, my family for the rest of their life will be having passive income coming in. I can now just assign, hey, this house is going this direction. This, you know what, my business manager, I love you. You'll get this one, right? It's about building that generational wealth.
Yeah.
And now there's different models in place so that we can really grow and build businesses together.
Peerspace is very good too. Peerspace we got turned on to when, shout out to Assets Over Liabilities. We have a show Revolt, and we did it in Atlanta, and we used somebody's apartment, and the girl was actually a big fan, so she stayed and she spoke to us, and she was like giving us the game on it, and I'm like, what's going on here? And she's like, Peerspace is a platform where you can rent your house or your apartment for hours, as opposed to Airbnb where you're renting it for days at a time. So it's real good for production companies, especially in cities like New York, Atlanta, or LA. And then we went to LA, and then we did another episode of Revolt, and they did the same thing at a house. So it's like a lot of these houses in these markets where you see like rap videos or shows or commercials. And the good thing is that even if your building doesn't allow Airbnb, from my understanding, right, Matt, you can still do Peerspace because they're not spending the night. It's just like having a guest over, right? And then it's like they're only there for a couple of hours as opposed to the whole. And the rate is a lot higher because you're charging film companies and production companies, stuff like that. So that's another way to actually get some money from renting out your spot. And like I said, especially if you're in a market like a Miami, New York, Atlanta, LA, where there's always going to be content, because content creation is only going to get bigger. And a lot of people don't have places to film content. So it's like, whether you have a nice house or a nice apartment or a nice view, that is valuable because now people can actually film content from your space. Like where we're at right now, this is not our space. Komodo is like, it's a restaurant that they let us come in here. So that's another thing to think about.
And the beauty of it is you can have multiple day shoots. Right. And so if you rent the space from 10 to 5 for 3 days, you're probably going to make as much as you did, if not more than you did if you rented it on the Airbnb. But I want to come back to what you were saying, because as you're talking, I'm hearing multiple streams. I remember when you came to New York, right, and you're talking about buying property. Now, when did that switch go on in your brain? Or has that always been kind of the mindset as you were coming into the industry and accumulating money? Was how many streams can I get? Or was there somebody that mentored you or guided you? Was like, hey, I see that you're doing well. Here's an avenue you should try to explore.
Damon John was one of those guys early. My lawyer, I'll never forget, Daryl Miller, another one of those guys who told me, you got to have 7 streams of income before you can even really start to talk about wealth, right? You can make money, right? But you got to figure out other streams of making horizontal money, which is when you're laying down how you're able to make money. And for a long time in my career, when being on TV, there's that want to be in front of the camera, right? I want to be the guy in front of the camera. I want you to see me making money, right? And then there's a part of maturity that happens, right? And then you realize, oh, if I'm getting this much money, if I'm making $1 million for this show, being on camera, then the executive producer that's paying me must be at least making $2 million, right? And so over the past, I would say 5 to 6 years, I've really just been shifting to more of a business standpoint, executive producing more projects, executive producing more content. How do I leverage my relationships? How do I leverage my personality so that pretty much anytime I walk out of the house, I monetize every single thing that I do, right? So even being here in this restaurant, I'm gonna call them afterward and be like, hey, we need to do a series of podcasts. So you know what I mean? Like it's about leveraging everything around you, and that's something that I've learned to discover and appreciate later on.
This that Red Panda Anthem. Ian, what's up? This that Red Panda Anthem. Red Panda, what's good? Red Panda Anthem. Your boy going up. I know they can't stand it.